'cause it's a daily vlog with Steven Fuller.
Vlog 11, Limitations. A few weeks ago, I was out with my laptop working on some music, and I remember seeing an ad while I was watching a YouTube video or something on like another mobile music production app or interface, something along those lines. And I had this thought where I was just like, I just can't do it. I've gotten too used to a laptop. Like there's this new generation of people that are, making beats and music on GarageBand on their iPhone. And that's really cool, but like I can't do it. The interface is too small. I've gotten so used to Logic. And then I sort of caught myself and I was like, wait a second, Steve, you haven't really like given it a chance. And I've done one video. So if you check out my channel, go ahead and hit subscribe and like. I've got a video, Freelance Life, and I think the most recent episode I did a remix of a song that I wrote before on an iPhone in GarageBand, and that was really fun. But that was like the only serious sort of music production that I've done inside of iOS GarageBand. So today, I took the kids to the dinosaur park here in Kaiserslautern, and I was about to pack up my laptop and all my gear and everything, and then I was like, you know what, today's the day, let's do it. And so I left the laptop at home and I only brought my iPad, an Apogee Jam 96 kilohertz interface, my guitar, and headphones. And that was it. With the intent to see what I could do using only an iPad. Like what all can I get done? How far in the production process can I get? And it was incredibly fun. It inspired creativity in a lot of ways. If you spend time on any like music production forums, it invariably you will run into people eventually where they'll make some post of like, GarageBand is a mere toy and only serious musicians will use a professional DAW, and they'll, with that accent and everything, that's how they'll say it. I'm just kidding. But they'll talk about, Fruity Loops, that's a kid's toy for production. GarageBand, you can't produce music with GarageBand. Man. And it's like a pissing contest for like who spent the most money on their music production software. Now, that's not to say that there's not differences. It's not to say that there's not a reason that you would want to get maybe a more robust digital audio workstation. But this idea that certain digital audio workstations are a toy that can't do serious work, I find completely suspect. It's very self-serving and, So anyway, I had a lot of fun in GarageBand. And you know what? I really wasn't that limited. Like it comes with a lot of built-in tools. I can't do some of the fancy like routing and production stuff that I would do on like a big session, but that's not the point. That's not what it's for. And the idea that it's just a toy, you can't do any serious music, you can't create serious music is total bullshit to me. And now I've proved it to myself. You can totally make really cool stuff with it. I mean, and the tools are all kinds of stuff. You've got delays, reverbs, compressors, drum tracks, synthesizers, strings, horns, like all of it's there. And then if you've got an interface like I did with your guitar, if you've got a microphone to sing, there's exactly zero reason why you can't at least get a great rough demo down using only GarageBand for iOS. Now, it's got a couple of limitations for sure. One of which is the track limit, right? So you're on an iPad and you can't get more than, I want to say it's like 8 or 12 tracks, something like that. So, okay, sure, got it. You're not going to be doing some big MIDI mock-up, with 50 tracks. But again, not the point. So it was a great exercise in sort of overcoming that mental hurdle and that bias, that like, oh, I can't do it. No, you can, you really can. And actually the constraints forced me to really hone in on a specific idea and develop it. It narrowed down the possibilities and allowed me to really like funnel deeply into let's write, let's go, let's get stuff done, let's get ideas down and just go without thinking about it and without sitting there and tweaking an EQ. You just get to focus on the idea, and it was great. So I wanted to share the two ideas that I came up with. The first one, by the way, I did a video for. I already shared it on Facebook, but I wanted to share it with this for my YouTube audience. Everything you're about to see was done on an iPad. I did not take it out of the iPad. I didn't export it. Didn't do any post-production. I recorded the music in GarageBand. I recorded the video on the front-facing camera on the iPad. I put it together on iMovie for iOS and then uploaded. It was a complete production from start to finish with an upload, all from the iPad, all in an outdoor park with no Wi-Fi. I just tethered to my cell phone. Okay, so for the next example, or next song that I got done, I dove into sort of some classic ambient post-rock, kind of stuff. Really drawn out, long, moody, with very reverb, washy kind of guitars and stuff like that. Had a lot of fun doing this one as well. And this one, just really pretty chords with a couple of like tension tones in there that you just let ring out forever. And it was a lot of fun. Now, the one thing that I tried on this one, just for the hell of it, to see how it would go, is I busted out GarageBand's strings, the string quartet little, sample library that it's got in there. And I'll take a detour here and let's talk for a second about sample libraries. When I first got into the world of composing, especially for video games, there was kind of like this progression that happens when it comes to your production. When you first get into it, you start just sort of making music in the raw, right? And then you go and you get some feedback and you start listening to other game composers and stuff, and they're all like, I can tell that your sample libraries sound really fake and you need to work on your MIDI editing and stuff like that, which is true. True statement. There's a lot of people who do not spend enough time on editing MIDI. But you kind of get lost in this rabbit hole a little bit where you'll be like, oh man, I can't do that in my sample. I need a better sample library. Let's go see sticker shock as you look at this new, string sample library that costs, $500 or $1,000 for a, really good sample library. And then you go and you see like the people who are doing well, and you're like, hey, what do you think of this library? And everybody's like, oh, you can't be a serious composer unless you have that library. It just makes all the difference, And like, if you want your mock-ups to sound realistic, you got to have this sample library. So then you go and you spend money getting these sample libraries and learning how to really make, realistic sounding mock-ups and stuff like that, and you're so forth. Then you look at the top tier of composers, like the guys at the very top, and they go, forget samples. You need to hire real musicians. Like that's the secret sauce. Have a real musician. Sample libraries will never be what a real musician is. And then like the mid-tier people argue with the top people because they're like, yeah, but you can't always afford to have live musicians on it. So you get in this rabbit hole of just a bunch of people, a bunch of composers arguing with each other about the realism of their sample libraries and why you should spend the money on it. And many of these people are friends. I'm not, if you do this, I'm not throwing a dart at you exactly. I love all of my composer friends and colleagues. They're wonderful people and they help me out. But on this topic, we all, myself included, I did it too, we all sort of get wrapped around the axle about this stuff. And it kind of defeats it takes some of the, the fun out of it. Now, it is important. It's not that it's not important. Yes, you do need better samples. And if you're in that world where you're like, you need to make a realistic mock-up as like a demo to show a producer to convince them to pay for the orchestra, that kind of, yeah, okay, I can see that, but often that's not how the conversations go down. And I think people who aren't in that boat, they're not truly in that boat, are arguing far more vehemently for these realistic string libraries, and and it's sort of like gear acquisition syndrome where you always just have to have this next best thing or else your sound won't be there. Anyway, detour over, back to GarageBand. GarageBand has a string emulator. Is it the same as real? No, it's not, of course not. But it was super incredibly fun. I had fun with it and I liked the way that it sounded. Is it going to fool anybody that it's real strings? No, but it sounds cool on its own. And if you kind of treat it as its own texture, that's in the ballpark of a string quartet, in the same way that you would with, like a guitar emulator, or like taking a keyboard and putting distortion on it, making it sound like a guitar. You're going for the texture. I would always prefer to have like Videri String Quartet, which I'm friends with Rosie, and they did some strings for me on one of the songs that I've done on YouTube. I would always rather have them, always, every single time. But not every project calls for that. I can't always afford that on every project. And so, in that context, it was really super fun. So that was a long-winded way of saying I liked it a lot. You can program all the chords on it, and it's really, really responsive, the way that you play it. So when you tap, you get pizzicato. When you slowly tap from the bottom, you get sort of a low voicing of whatever chord you've selected, and the more that you kind of like go up the ribbon, there's like the ribbons for each chord, and so the more that you utilize it, the more the strings swell in, and so it actually is a really fun sort of organic way to play this string-like sound. So I want to show you the song and then show you a little bit of what I did and why it's so fun.